This is the one kitchen upgrade that can cost you $10,000 or more to fix, and nobody in the showroom will warn you about it. You have probably seen it on Instagram. A seamless stone sink carved directly into the countertop. No visible seams, no separate fixtures, just one continuous sweep of luxury, and it looks absolutely stunning. But here is the problem. Those beautiful mitered joints rely on industrial epoxy, and epoxy can degrade. Every time you drain boiling pasta water, the temperature swings cause stress at those seams. Yet you cannot see it happening. Based on what fabricators report, this type of damage tends to build gradually over years, until one morning you notice a hairline crack running across your basin. And here's where it gets expensive. With a traditional undermount sink, you replace a $200 fixture. But with an integrated stone sink, you replace the entire countertop. We are talking $3,000 to $15,000, plus demolition, plus new fabrication, plus installation.
So before you sign off on that gorgeous seamless sink in your renovation contract, I am going to show you exactly why designers are quietly warning against this trend, and more importantly, what they actually put in their own kitchens instead. If you do not want to learn this lesson the expensive way, subscribe and hit like right now. Let us start with what the showroom shows you versus what actually happens when real life meets luxury stone. Why does this showroom dream become a homeowner nightmare? Scroll through any high-end kitchen account and you will find them. Seamless stone basins where the sink appears to grow directly from the countertop. And the aesthetic is undeniably beautiful. Minimalist perfection, European sophistication, quiet luxury at its finest. But here is what those photos do not reveal. According to fabrication specialist at Sanic KB, an integrated stone sink represents a fundamentally different risk profile compared to traditional systems. And the reason is simple. Once the sink is no longer a separate component, any damage affects the entire countertop assembly. In other words, the sink and counter become one liability instead of two separate ones. Kitchen designers at Landmark Surfaces confirm this reality. They note that professional custom fabrication requires reinforced joints to handle the weight of water and garbage disposals. Yet even perfect fabrication cannot overcome the fundamental engineering challenge. Because here is the truth. When daily kitchen use meets bonded stone assemblies, something eventually gives. And when it does, you are not calling a plumber for a quick fix. You are calling a demolition crew for a full countertop replacement. So the question becomes, why do these beautiful joints fail in the first place? Let me explain how these sinks are actually constructed, because once you understand the process, the problem becomes obvious. An integrated stone sink is not carved from a single massive block. That would be impractical. Instead, fabricators cut separate pieces and bond them together using mitered joints and industrial epoxy adhesives. Stone Fabricators Alliance members describe the process. They put all pieces together, double-check accuracy, apply glue, and join everything carefully. And it does look flawless at first. But according to professionals at Granite, those bonded joints represent hidden time bombs. Metal reinforcement rods are sometimes embedded to strengthen sink rails. And here is where physics works against you. Most of these rods are mild steel, so when moisture eventually reaches them, they rust. And when steel rusts, it expands. And when it expands inside stone, it creates what engineers call oxide jacking pressure. The result? The stone cracks in long, straight lines, usually right in front of the sink where you stand every day. And here is the worst part. A crack caused by internal rusting is nearly impossible to repair cleanly. Because the failure starts inside the stone, homeowners have no way to detect it until it is too late. But even without hidden metal rods, those epoxy bonds face another enemy, your daily kitchen routine. Think about what happens at your sink every single day, and pay attention to the temperature swings. You drain a pot of boiling pasta water. Instantly, the temperature jumps from room temperature to 212 degrees. Then you run cold water to rinse vegetables. Then more hot water for dishes. Then cold again. Each swing causes the stone and epoxy to expand and contract at different rates. And according to materials research, this thermal cycling tends to create microstresses at bonded joints over time. Patent documentation confirms that dissimilar thermal expansion coefficients between adhesives and substrates often lead to adhesive failure.
According to fabrication experts, quartz countertops can handle moderate heat, but prolonged or intense heat causes damage, burning, discoloration, and most critically, cracking at vulnerable points like sink cutouts and seams. Now add chemical exposure, bleach-based cleaners, acidic citrus juices, wine spills, vinegar, coffee. Each of these substances interacts with the adhesive bonds over time. Professional restoration companies explain what happens next. Water can enter joints through insufficient silicone, and once water intrudes, it damages the bond between stone and structure. Slowly, invisibly, irreversibly. And here is the critical difference from traditional setups. With a simple undermount sink, you can reseal the joint or replace the basin. But with an integrated sink, you cannot separate it from the countertop. So once that bond begins to fail, your options shrink to two: expensive professional repair or complete replacement. Which brings us to the financial reality that showroom presentations conveniently skip. Why does sink damage mean countertop replacement? Let me put real numbers on this decision, because the math is brutal. According to SaniKB's project analysis, in a modular system with a separate undermount sink, a damaged sink can be removed. The countertop stays intact. Downtime and cost remain controlled. You might spend $200 to $600 replacing a single fixture. But with an integrated sink, sink failure equals countertop replacement. And it does not stop there. Cabinetry and backsplash may also need attention. Lead times increase significantly. Here are the actual numbers. A standard undermount stainless steel sink costs between $150 and $400. Meanwhile, an integrated quartz sink runs 3 to 5 times higher, according to South Florida kitchen and bath pricing data. And that premium buys you a system where any future failure affects the entire surface. Not just the basin, the countertop, the seams, everything. One professional described it this way: because these units are built in, a single joint failure often forces you to replace the entire countertop rather than just swapping out a simple basin. So let us do the math. A typical kitchen island with an integrated sink means replacing 10 to 20 square feet of material. At current rates, that is $3,000 to $8,000 in materials alone, plus demolition costs, plus fabrication, plus installation. We are easily looking at double or triple that figure. And here is what makes it worse. You cannot just repair the damage like you would with a traditional setup. Why can't you just repair the damage? With traditional sink setups, small chips and scratches can often be fixed. Professional stone restoration companies offer epoxy filling, polishing, and color matching, and minor damage becomes virtually invisible. But integrated sinks present a different challenge. According to industry analysis, scratches inside the sink cannot be refinished independently. Surface wear requires professional stone polishing, and aggressive cleaning agents risk dulling the finish permanently. The geometry is the problem. The curved interior of a sink basin is extremely difficult to access with standard polishing equipment. Unlike a flat countertop surface where technicians use weighted polishing pads, the inside of a sink requires specialized tools that many restoration companies simply do not have. And here is the maintenance paradox. Integrated sinks are marketed as easier to clean because there is no seam between sink and counter where grime accumulates. And that part is true, but long-term maintenance tells a different story. Experts note that integrated sinks reduce daily cleaning effort but increase long-term service complexity. This trade-off is often underestimated during early design stages. In other words, your daily wipe down might be slightly easier, but when that inevitable scratch appears after years of use, you face a much more expensive situation than you would with a traditional undermount. And there is one more concern that rarely comes up in design discussions, but matters for real families. What about the hidden health risks? When scratches develop inside an integrated stone sink, and they will with regular use, those scratches create microscopic surface texture. This could create conditions where bacteria find places to accumulate that are difficult to reach with standard cleaning. Unlike a stainless steel sink that can be scoured aggressively without damage, or a porcelain sink that can be bleached clean, a scratched stone surface cannot be sanitized as effectively. According to home repair specialist at Fix-It Countertop, a failing sink can lead to water damage and mold growth in adjacent cabinet areas. When seals begin to fail, moisture migrates into places you cannot see or clean. The porosity concern applies differently to different stone types. Professional installation guidance notes that granite is porous and needs proper sealing, particularly in places where water is constantly present. Without that sealing, water penetrates the stone and creates problems from within. Now, quartz composite materials are generally non-porous and more hygienic than natural stone. But those bonded joints where different pieces meet remain potential failure points where moisture can enter the system. So for families with children or anyone concerned about kitchen hygiene, the traditional undermount stainless steel sink remains the professional standard for a reason. It can be sanitized aggressively, replaced affordably if damaged, and it does not hide potential moisture problems inside bonded stone assemblies. Which raises the obvious question: what do smart designers actually choose? What do smart designers actually choose? If integrated stone sinks have all these hidden problems, what should you choose instead? According to kitchen design analysts citing NKBA data, from 2025, approximately 65% of households prefer stainless steel undermount kitchen sinks. And the House 2025 survey reports around 70% user satisfaction with undermount configurations. Here is why professionals make this recommendation. Undermount sinks mounted beneath stone countertops give you the seamless wipe-down experience without the structural integration risks. You can sweep crumbs directly from counter to sink, but the sink remains a separate, replaceable component. Stainless steel specifically offers several advantages. It is completely non-porous, so no bacteria hide in surface scratches. It withstands thermal shock from boiling water without cracking risk. It can be scoured with abrasive cleaners if needed. And when it eventually wears out after 15 to 20 years, you replace a $200 to $400 sink rather than a multi-thousand-dollar countertop. For homeowners who love the all-stone aesthetic, consider an undermount sink in a color-matched composite material. Modern quartz composite sinks offer heat resistance up to 535 degrees and come in colors that coordinate with popular countertop options. Professional fabricators also recommend precision fit sinks using mechanical mounting brackets rather than relying solely on adhesive bonds. This ensures the weight is supported by the cabinetry rather than just industrial glue. The key principle is modularity. Choose components that can be maintained, repaired, or replaced independently. Your kitchen will look just as beautiful, but your renovation will remain functional and affordable to maintain for decades. Now, I want to be fair here, because not every integrated sink becomes a disaster. There are specific situations where this design choice could make sense, but notice I said could, not will. The first scenario is a low-traffic bar sink. If you are installing a small prep sink in a wet bar or butler's pantry, the usage pattern changes everything. You are not draining boiling pasta water 3 times a week. You are not scrubbing heavy pots. You are rinsing wine glasses and filling ice buckets. In that context, the thermal and mechanical stress on those epoxy joints drops dramatically, and the risk calculation shifts in favor of aesthetics. The second scenario is a guest bathroom vanity. This is probably the safest application for integrated stone. A powder room that guests use a few times per week faces almost none of the stress factors we discussed. No boiling water, no heavy cookware, no aggressive scrubbing. The bond integrity tends to hold because the conditions never push it to the limit. The third scenario is a short-term investment property. If you are flipping a house and need that luxury Instagram aesthetic for staging photos, an integrated sink could serve its purpose before any long-term degradation appears. You sell, you move on. The next owner inherits the risk. Now, I am not saying this is ethical, but it explains why you see these sinks in so many real estate listings. However, here's the critical distinction. In each of these scenarios, the stakes are lower. A bar sink failure does not shut down your kitchen. A guest bath repair does not disrupt daily family life. But your primary kitchen sink, That is a different calculation entirely. And this is where the pattern becomes clear. The places where integrated sinks tend to survive are the places where they are barely used. Low traffic, low stress, low exposure. The moment you introduce real daily kitchen life with its thermal swings and chemical exposure and mechanical stress, the failure probability climbs. So if a designer or showroom tells you that integrated sinks work perfectly in kitchens, ask them one simple question. Do they have one in their own home? Based on industry conversations, the answer is almost always no. They choose the modular undermount setup because they understand what daily use actually does to bonded stone assemblies. Which brings us back to the core principle. Beauty is wonderful, but beauty that survives real life is even better. So here is what you need to remember. The integrated stone sink is the social media favorite that professional fabricators quietly warn against. Those seamless mitered joints that look so beautiful, they rely on epoxy bonds that degrade under daily thermal and chemical stress. That continuous stone surface from counter to drain, it means any sink damage requires countertop replacement. That quiet luxury aesthetic, it comes with a hidden price tag that only reveals itself years later. But you have a better option. A quality undermount stainless steel sink with a beautiful stone countertop gives you the seamless look you want with the modularity and repairability you need. That is what designers actually put in their own kitchens. If this video saved you from an expensive renovation mistake, hit that like button and subscribe so you do not miss next week's video. Now I want to hear from you. Have you seen integrated stone sinks in person? What did you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I will see you in the next one.